Hello and welcome back to the M is for Mama podcast in 2026. I'm your host, Abby Halberstadt, happy wife, mama to 10, Bible-believing Christian, and we are going to dive into all things New Year in this podcast. But before we jump into the episode, I want to highlight our podcast sponsor, Voetberg Music Academy. And on a personal note, we gave our son Theo, who is 11 as of December 30th, a little junior guitar for his birthday because he'd been really wanting to learn. And I love that I had VMA available to me on my computer. I didn't have to add another thing to our busy schedule to try to find guitar lessons for him. And he has already started learning how to play guitar through Voetberg Music Academy, which your students can do as well. They can also learn fiddle and mandolin and ukulele and piano. You can share lessons between siblings for as little as $30 a month. And you can use my code MIsForMama20 for 20% off each month that you're enrolled at VoetbergMusicAcademy.com. Make sure you skip all the ice and the snow and the cold out there taking kids to lessons and instead give them the gift of music right at home. That's MIsForMama20 for 25% off at VoetbergMusicAcademy.com. Okay, I said I would jump into all things New Year, and some of you may be cringing, like, really, Abby, are we doing New Year, New You, or what's the theme here? And I think you know me well enough if you've been listening for a while to know that that's not where we're going with this. But I did want to talk about the concept of capacity. I've done this several times. I don't even remember the exact podcast episodes. Maybe I'll have Ezra track them down if I can remember what was in the title. Because believe it or not, I have this happen all of the time on my social media where people are like, what number is this podcast? I do not actually have my my topics memorized according to podcast number or episode number. So I'll see if I can track that down. But I have definitely talked about seasons where we feel either more limited in our capacity or more emboldened to embrace more capacity. And it has to do with a lot of factors in our lives as individuals, but also just the ebb and flow of motherhood. When we have newborns in the house, very likely our capacity is way more limited than usual because we are keeping a tiny, completely dependent human alive. We're not getting very much sleep. If we have other children, we're doing our best to take care of their needs, plus the aforementioned keeping of the tiny human alive on almost no sleep. And that means that it's not a great season usually to take on something new, to take a leadership role, to do things that really push you past your burnout limit. And I love that I say that because I have 100% not followed that very wise advice that I've gotten from other people and learned from experience and pushed myself and ended up in burnout as a result. I talk about this in a chapter of Hard is Not the Same Thing as Bad, where I talk about the idea that hard is not necessarily the same thing as good either, just pushing ourselves for the sake of pushing ourselves or piling more on our plate because we, quote, can is maybe not always, but often not a good idea. So when we look at these rhythms and these seasons and these ebbs and flows of capacity in motherhood, I think it's really important to acknowledge that while every person's personality will contribute, their situation at home, how much their husband helps or doesn't, whether they have outside help, whether they work outside the home or work at home, there's just going to be so many individual factors that contribute to whether you're capable of taking on the same thing as someone else. But the main thing is, why are we even trying? Why would we even look over here at what this person is doing and say, well, she's doing it, therefore I probably should too. I have talked about the concept that comparison isn't inherently quite the evil thing we make it out to be. I mean, there's that famous quote, I think it's credited to Teddy Roosevelt, that comparison is the thief of joy. And when comparison is done for the sake of feeling like we are either superior or not measuring up and wallowing or exulting in those extremes, then I agree with him. However, there are times, and I have a whole episode on this, and I do know the title of this one, so I'll have Ezra link that in the show notes. But there are times when we can look around at examples of godly people that we admire and say, oh, wow, that's working for her. I can take a little bit of that and adapt that for my home. Maybe not adopt it wholesale, but like, I hadn't thought of doing it that way. This happens to me all the time. There are so many times that I look or something comes across my feed on social media, or I have a conversation with a mom and I'm like, why didn't it ever occur to me to simplify things and do it that way or a version of that way. So I'm setting all of that up because as I share with you where I am in terms of capacity this year, I want to make sure that you know that I am all about seeking the Lord's will and being wise with the resources and the time and the circumstances that He's given us specifically, while at the same time being humble enough to glean ideas or maybe feel inspired or jump started by something that we hadn't considered before. So let's rewind to a year ago, because I don't know exactly what date this podcast that I'm thinking of was published, but it's got to be somewhere very close to almost exactly a year ago in the first week of January, coming back after I take a social media and podcast break for the last week or so of December, and then come back in January. We started up homeschooling today. Like we're back to real life now. So it totally makes sense for me to get back into this rhythm now. But a year ago, it did not feel like most of the things in my life felt like too much. I had just found out, I think 2 days before Christmas, maybe 3 days before Christmas, that we had lost our second baby of 2024. And my body had not physically miscarried yet. As of the first week of January, I was still waiting for that process to start, which is a really weird place to be mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, all of it. And I didn't have any motivation to be a new anything. I was doing well to get up in the morning, get out of bed, make breakfast, teach my kids, interact. And I still put one foot in front of another and fulfilled my obligations that I had on me, but without a lot of inspiration, I will put it that way. And I did not place any New Year's resolutions on my shoulders. The weight of that, it wouldn't have drowned me or anything, but it would have just been an unnecessary burden to carry around because I was grappling with what I had right in front of me in that moment, in that hour, in that day. And it was really kind of making Matthew 6, 31, I think, but I'll have Ezra double check me on that. But it's the Matthew 6 chapter where essentially it says, don't worry about tomorrow. Today has enough trouble of its own. And that's true on January, what day will this release? January 6th, maybe, or 7th, 2026. That's true this year as well. And I'm not trying to borrow trouble from tomorrow, but there are seasons when it is hard to carry anything else but what we already have in our hands. And it's hard to carry what we have in our hands. And that was last year. And I talked to you about my diminished capacity, about the fact that I was entering 2025 with not a shaken faith or a lack of hope or feeling bereft or abandoned by God. Actually, quite the opposite. The Lord was really near to my broken heart and my lack of motivation and my tiredness and my back pain that I was dealing with, which is a recurring theme, especially when I'm going through hormonal fluctuations and physical change like a miscarriage. All of those things were very real and very present, but so was the Lord's presence in my life. And so it didn't feel like that, but it didn't feel like the time to be the Energizer Bunny or to start new things. Well, fast forward to this year, and this has been probably the most go-getter, I don't know if that's the right term, but definitely high capacity early January and month of December that I can remember having for a while, which makes sense because in 2023, we had a house flood. I dealt with 4 months of terrible back pain that made it hard to get out of bed in the morning. And by the end of it, I was barely able to walk, couldn't touch my toes, couldn't pick things up. Like it got bad. Which some of you are like, I can never touch my toes. And I'm not a very flexible person. So maybe that wasn't the best example, but a good example would be lying on my back. I could not extend one of my legs at all. It was permanently bent up toward my chest because of how much restriction I had in my muscles and my joints and inflammation and all of that. So it makes sense that 2024 didn't start with a great big load of let's go get new things done. I was just happy not to be dealing with as much back pain by that point. And then last year I had a miscarriage, was dealing with back pain again. And then this year, um, the back pain thing kind of comes and goes. And I've definitely dealt with some of that this week, actually, but not to a debilitating degree. And, the house didn't flood. Um, just certain things that were taken off my plate because different seasons have different amounts of struggle. And it feels like I have fresh vision for this year. It feels like I have, if not more energy, the word is capacity. The word is capacity. I feel like I have more capacity in this season to, and I was going to say dream, but I'm not really a dreamer, but to look forward to the future and feel excited about possibilities as opposed to simply putting one foot in front of the other. So I thought I would share with you some of the specific things that I am engaging with. You can call them resolutions, you can call them tweaks, you can call them convictions that I feel, ready to tackle, whatever. I don't really think that making a list of ways you're going to suddenly upgrade or drastically change your life is necessarily the best idea in the world, especially in the dead of winter. Now, I will say that we always have pretty mild, or typically have pretty mild end of Decembers, as in my kids bemoan the fact that not only do we not have a white Christmas, but it seems to get warmer as Christmas week approaches. So we had some nice cool weather, like crisp, brisk weather in early December, and then it kept creeping up until the week of Christmas was like 70 degrees on Christmas Day. Now, it was sunny and 70 degrees and not humid, and it was a gorgeous day. But of course, my kids were like, how do you drink hot chocolate and, get cozy by the fire when it's basically spring outside? And it has continued in that vein, kind of going up and down for the last week of December and January. So it's either like 38 degrees outside and nice and crisp, or it's almost 80 degrees, which we have dealt with all of that. But it has been nice that there's been beautiful weather mixed in with it. I think that helps my mood so much. So when I say, the dark of winter, we here in East Texas are not necessarily dealing with that consistently. I know my friends in Minnesota and Idaho and the East Coast are like, yay for you. In fact, I mentioned the fact that we'd had these fluctuating temperatures and people were like, yeah, well, it is consistently negative 25 where I am. So no complaints, no complaints. And I know it does help my mood to have sunshine and weather where I can go outside and weather where my kids can play outside. But I had some things that I prayed about and wrote down and thought about and considered over and over again throughout really the month of December, some in November, as I just started writing notes in my phone very informally. And the biggest one was time spent on my phone. I would not say as a general rule that I'm, quote, addicted to my phone, but that's probably being kind to myself. I mean, my job is to use my phone. So let's put it this way. If someone works in an office and they use their computer a lot for work, no one says they're, quote, addicted to their computer. So the times when I'm using my phone to create things because it's a requirement on me to fulfill my profession, whether that is making notes for posts for Instagram, whether it's typing out Instagram captions, whether it's creating social media posts or graphics, or jotting down brainstorming ideas for a book that I'm writing, or whatever, sending emails. All of those things are not, quote, addicted to my phone, but because social media is such an intentionally addictive place to be, it's easy to move from I'm using this for creation and for productivity to, and now I'm scrolling, or now I'm checking DMs too often, or whatever. And so I really felt like it was sliding more that direction than I wanted it to. And I had that on my radar as something that I wanted to very specifically and intentionally address, just so that as I felt it sliding, I could check that, put it back in its rightful place, and replace it with other things. So one of my New Year's resolutions is always to read the Bible through in a year. I don't always make it. I don't always get all of it in, but I do consistently read from my 1 Year Bible chronological journaling resource, which I will have as a link for you in the show notes because I get asked about that a lot. I can make notes in the margins because they have space for that. And it's the New Living Translation, which is essentially a very faithful paraphrase rather than a specific translation. I mean, when I say paraphrase, people are like, whoa, hold up. How can that be accurate? But it is very, very accurate to the text. It just has a slightly more readable, slightly less formal tone. And I love the ESV. So I have no problem with formal tone. I like the NKJV. I like the NASB. I like the BRB. Why do I feel like I should be singing the Bible? Yes, that's the book for me. But I love versions that are word for word accurate and have the formal tone. But my journaling Bible is actually a New Living Translation, and I really enjoy that one too. And my goal this year is to read at least 5 days a week and then have the weekend to, for example, Sunday mornings, I struggle to read because we're getting out early, getting out of the house early, getting to church, plus we're worshiping, we are studying God's word. And so I usually don't read on Sunday mornings. So to be able to have a little bit of ebb and flow with the reading plan. And I have friends. I have a friend who listens to this podcast. Hi, Caroline, who is from the UK, who was talking about how she was going to join a women's group that was studying the Psalms, I think throughout the entire year. So it was like 3 Psalms. I haven't broken it down. 3 Psalms a week, I think, but to look at them more in depth. And then she was going to listen to the Old Testament. And then I think she had a New Testament Bible reading plan. So there's no wrong way to do this, but focus on scripture is definitely always one of my recommitments each year. And that's on the list. The putting my phone in its proper place and not, being distracted by it or spending too much time on it, getting my work done and then putting it away is definitely high up there. There is a resource that I don't personally own, but I keep seeing my Instagram creator friends talk about called a brick. And I guess it's something where it basically locks you out of your phone apps that you select without your having to delete the apps off your phone specifically, kind of as a catch-all. And so from this time to this time, you can't access those apps. So that holds you accountable. And I'm seriously considering looking into that. I'll have Ezra put a link to that as well if you want to check that out. Ezra, you have a lot of links today. Sorry, bud. And so one thing that I wanted to replace phone time in the evening specifically with was reading physical books, which is not something that I have felt the freedom to prioritize in several years. So I listen to audiobooks, I read my Bible physically, and that is about it. And I have always enjoyed reading physical books, but I just have felt for the past 3 or so years like I just wasn't getting to it. That I could make excuses, I could give explanations, but I just, whatever the case may be, it was not going high enough on my priority list to actually get to it. And this is the year that I'm like, okay, we can change this. We can read 10 minutes a day. It doesn't have to be a long time. I have a feeling that my love of reading physical books will beget more time spent in it. Like as I read those 10 minutes, I'll want 10 more here or there throughout the day, and I can take it with me in my purse. And I have already made good on that promise to myself. I started reading a book called Theo of Golden 2 days ago. I will say that while I love it so far and it comes highly recommended, I did not do a deep dive into the content, and I do not know if it has objectionable content in it. And I am not far enough to be able to tell you. So far, the content has not been objectionable at all. So if you already have read Theo of Golden, I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you have not and you're going to go buy it and you get halfway through it and you're like, I cannot believe Abby recommended this, please keep in mind that I have not gotten far enough to know whether it's a true recommendation. I'm just telling you transparently that is what I am reading, and it is extremely well written. It's the debut novel of I think a 70-year-old man named Alan Levi, unless I'm just making up some of those names and numbers, but I think I have that right. So he's never been published before, I don't think. He's like a singer-songwriter, all these other things, but he's a really good writer. He's obviously been practicing for a long time. So enjoying that so far. And I have a list in my phone of books I want to tackle next. This is not a New Year's resolution. It's just something I have to do, but I am actually turning in the manuscript for a devotional, which is a motherhood devotional that will accompany my MS for Mama trilogy. It's not, it's not part of the trilogy, but it will be a really good companion or a standalone. Like it would work great to be a resource and a good read for any mom without having read my other stuff, but it'll also complement the trilogy really well. And that is due March 1st, which is going to come before I know it. I already know this. It's going to come so quickly. And I have to get out the door for a basketball game soon. So I'm going to have to talk a little faster about all the other things that I have on my list. And again, keep in mind with that whole big intro that I did, this is not about comparison. This is not about, wow, Abby's got all these things and she's already doing them and I haven't done anything. I haven't even thought about it. I haven't even hardly registered that it's 2026. I'm behind. No, it's not that way. I've had plenty of years where that's exactly how I felt. And it didn't mean I was behind or doing something bad or anything like that. But this is the year that I have the capacity and I want to, or at least it's a year that I have capacity and I want to honor that by being diligent to follow through on some of these convictions. So I'm reading Theo of Golden, also trying to get more hydration. I actually was doing great on hydration. And then the holidays hit and it just felt like I didn't start drinking water or electrolytes or happy juice or anything that I normally drink every day until like 2 p.m., which at that point, if you glug 100 ounces between 2 p.m. and 10 p.m., not that you have to drink 100 ounces, but you're just going to be in the bathroom the entire rest of the day. So everything in moderation, but I am shooting for 80 ounces a day. And I'm on track today. So that's good. And have been on track most days recently. So I think that's something that really excites me is that when you have capacity and you apply it well, and that sounds like such a pat on the back, but just like we can acknowledge, hey, this is going well. I like the steps that I'm taking. And then at other times we can acknowledge, you know what? I said I was going to do something and I haven't done it. And I need to either reassess whether what I said I was going to do is reasonable, or I just need to follow through on my word because I said I was going to do it and I should be a person of my word. And a lot of the things that I've said that I wanted to work on were very reasonable things. I think that's a really huge factor in how you marry capacity with follow through. It's that you don't allow feeling like you have more capacity in this season to kind of snooker you into making these grandiose claims and aspirational goals that you can't possibly achieve with the actual resources that you have, even if you have more capacity than usual. So reading my Bible each day, check, I've done it. Reading a physical book instead of looking at my phone at night, check, I've done it. Putting my phone in another room to charge instead of having it in the room where I could easily like check my email and answer one, around dinner time, check, I've done that. I've been drinking more water. That's great. I already exercise really regularly, but one thing that I have let go intentionally in the last 6 months or so of having a lot of demands on my time and having some health things with tearing a ligament in my right leg, playing pickleball, and then having the DVT behind my leg and the surgery, I just kind of had to back off on something. And due to my schedule, I actually only teach one weight training class a week now. I used to teach, well, several moons ago, I taught 3, but I taught 2 until about a year and a half ago. And so having that change, the one day that I've been prioritizing lifting is the Monday that I teach. And then I try to get another day in, but there have been multiple days during this holiday season, particularly, that I haven't been able to prioritize that. That would have really frustrated me and made me feel like I wasn't prioritizing health or fitness in the past 10 years ago. That would have kind of panicked me. Oh my goodness, I'm going to lose all my muscle. I'm going to lose all my strength, which obviously is an overreaction. But I will say I've had a lot of peace that I'm doing the best I can with the resources that I have in the capacity. Again, there's that word that I had in that moment. And my son Simon is actually getting certified in what's called he's going to be a certified functional strength coach, which is a type of personal trainer that focuses on functional body movements as well as weight training and other kinds of training, so that you're not just trying to get jacked, you're trying to protect your whole body and help it work the best synergistically together. And so he, as his homeschool co-op senior project, is actually putting together these functional strength workouts for multiple members of our family, for Ezra and Della and my husband and me. And then he's tracking our progress. We just started that earlier this week. So I actually weight trained 4 times last week. Was that last week? Let me think. Yes. I'm recording this on a Monday. That was last week. So that felt really good because I'm back in the saddle of that without even making that a huge goal of mine. Another thing I want to focus on is very low spending for the next 6 months. I kind of always feel that way after I've finished all of the Christmas buying and all of the, this sale and that sale and this deal. So unless it's absolutely necessary, I don't want to impulse buy or just see like it's a good deal. Therefore, I'm going to get it to have another thing in my house. I've been working on decluttering and cleaning out closets. That's something I promised myself I would do in December, and I did it. I didn't get all of them done, but I consistently worked on tackling areas that, during that fall semester with homeschooling that are really hard to get to and all the other stuff that I've had. So I want to encourage you in this podcast, again, to not hear, well, Abby's pretty proud of herself for everything she's doing. More like, I'm excited for this season, and I know that another one is coming, and it may be diminished capacity again. It may be increased. It may be staying the same. It may be reevaluation. But if we approach each season with that attitude of open-handedness, saying, if the Lord wills, I'm going to organize this closet. If the Lord wills, I'm going to, keep lifting weights 3 times a week or 4 times a week. If the Lord wills, I'm going to get 80 ounces of water today. There's so much goodness in recognizing where you are, thanking the Lord for the strength that he's given you, thanking him for the presence in your life. Because I will say this, the Lord was near to me in my brokenheartedness last year, and he's near to me in my excitement this year. It's not like he stands off when we're doing well and is like, well, she's fine, so I'm just going to kind of push the bike seat and let her go off by herself without her training wheels. He's near to me in this as well, and that is such a comforting thought, and I hope that that is something that can encourage you wherever you are in capacity at the beginning of this January 2026. All right, I hope you guys have a great rest of your week, and I will see you back here next week. If you enjoyed the M's for Mama podcast, I would be so honored if you would subscribe and follow along, maybe share with friends, or even leave a review. And if you want more content on motherhood and biblical responses to cultural issues, be sure to follow along on Instagram at m.is.for.mama.